Welcome back to the Goldmark Gallery. I am joined here today by Jenny Grevatte for Jenny's fourth show at the Goldmark Gallery. Our last was in 2020, so a lot has changed since then. A lot has changed for Jenny too. She's brought some wonderful springtime colour to the Goldmark front room. Jenny, let's start by asking what's happened since your last show?
Well, I was able to get out and about finally after all the lockdown months. So immediately returned to Cornwall and returned to the wonderful forests around where I live, and also some trips abroad to Greece and Italy. So yes,
we'll see some of that reflected in this show.
Yes, you will do, yes.
Yeah. Alex is your son,
yes,
filmmaker, has also brought you to YouTube stardom recently.
Yes, yes, at this great old age, I'm suddenly a YouTube influencer. No, it's been wonderful. In the old days, if you wanted to reproduce an image, you had to have a professional photographer take a colour transparency, which had to be developed, and then you had to put it in the post, and usually the recipient would print it the wrong way around. And now you can have an image or a film going all over the world, and it's just amazing that your work can be seen by so many people and appreciated. And generally, I get the most wonderful comments come through each morning when I'm eating my breakfast.
Yeah, we've been enjoying them too.
Yes. So, yes, what an amazing world we live in. Yeah. Yes.
So Jenny's going to join me. She's going to guide us around this show and talk about some of the paintings in this new exhibition. I hope you enjoy what we have to show you. So already on this back wall of the main gallery space, we've got an idea of some of the paintings that will feature in this show. We've got Woodlands, as we've come to expect from you, Jenny, beautiful bright colour. And we've also got one of your recent moon paintings, Nocturnes, which have been a theme that you've been exploring the last couple of years. Let's start talking about these woodland paintings, because they give a great entry into your process. We've got bits of collage, we've got splatter painting going on, all sorts of different techniques going on. But also, in particular, the influence of local woodland to you, and also woodlands in places that are near and dear to your heart.
Yes. Well, this one is actually in Cornwall. People think of Cornwall as being seaside and coast, but it does have wonderful ancient woodlands, and this is just at the top of St Ives, a wood called Steeplewood, and there are mine workings in it, and it's quite eerie. But the trees there have the very distinct shapes, and at this time of year particularly, they are covered in vivid green moss, and the walls too are covered in green moss, and I just wanted to try and capture that. I did do a series, and this was one of the most successful ones. So
paintings like this, not local to you, but on other places that you enjoy visiting, would they have started in sketchbooks with sort of preliminary drawings,
yes,
that sort of thing?
Yes. I use a camera as well these days, and I use my iPad when I get back to the studio, but always I do initial sketches to get a feeling of the subject and how I want to interpret it, and what kind of surfaces I might use and what colour range my palette might be.
We've also got a number of the techniques that we've seen in these woodland paintings in the recent Nocturnes that you've been making, Jenny.
Well, quite often they are over unsuccessful woodland paintings. I mean, all artists have failures, and it's recognising the failures that is part of the system. So originally I was taking failures and reworking them, and I decided to incorporate a moon and the light effects of the moon. And because I'm no good at drawing circles and no good at measuring, I came up with using quirky things of packaging and pizza bases, and eventually got quite sophisticated, cutting circles out of acetate, because you can see you can actually place it over the area that you wish to leave and come up and around with your darker colours.
So you'd already have built up a kind of
yes,
kind of
it's all built up in layers, not generally in any specific order. In this case, I've put the very bright colours of the moon, and then I've gone in with the darker colours. And the art in it is recognising what's working and what isn't, and going back in and lifting off areas, maybe with a rag or with a dry brush, which aren't working, and allowing the colours to show through where they actually come together as a reasonable contrast. And with this foreground, it was important to capture the highlights, and they kept coming and going. And I have here used quite a lot of wax resist with the paint that I use. It does, texture. Yes. Yeah. And the stems.
And I love how actually how much the sort of the way that drips and areas of colour bleed into one another. They do mimic the kind of surface of the moon. It is that kind of lovely mottled effect that you see when you look up at it.
There is no constancy to the moon. It's forever changing, and clouds coming across it and reflected colours in it. So I started to worry, you know, should I be showing the seas of whatever? But in fact, it doesn't matter, you know, because it does change the whole time.
And it's lovely how large it looms in your paintings as well. It's almost sort of abnormally large.
It is, yes.
Illuminates
I
the whole
take
space.
endless liberties, yes. And I do spend a lot of time looking at it because I am an insomniac. So often I'm wandering around at 4 in the morning, gazing through the trees that are out of our bedroom window and watching the moon behind them. And that's how you learn how the colours behave and how the light behaves.
It's not always your immediate surroundings, it's sometimes also painters that you're engaging with in dialogue. We saw Uccello, I think, at the last exhibition.
Yes.
But I know that Bruegel has popped up on
many
several
times.
Occasions. Yeah.
Yes. Well, it's very important that artists keep looking at other artists. I'm constantly going to exhibitions and searching out knowledge from other artists. And Bruegel just never fails. You know, he does everything right. His compositions are right. If you look at the detail, it's right. If you look at the whole, it's right. Tells a story. The colours are right. You cannot fault him. And this one, I was absolutely thrilled to find in the Fitzwilliam Museum in Cambridge. I wasn't even aware they had one on show. And it wasn't Bruegel the elder, it was his son who did endless versions of his father's work. And I was able to get right up close and see that within the whole composition there are many small compositions, and I've taken that and developed it in my own particular way. And I always feel very cheeky when I'm doing this, you know, it feels a little irreverent, but I have applied paint quite differently and obviously a different scale. The whole painting is only about this size, which is quite amazing because you see it in reproduction all the time on a big screen and you're not aware of its size.
You lose sort of sense of scale of it.
You do, yes.
So as we come round onto the pictures on this wall, we can see it's not just local surroundings, Jenny, that have interested you, but it's many places that you visited. We've got Southwold in these beach huts on
yes,
the right.
On the east coast.
The Cotswolds, I believe, here. And behind me, we've got Beaches of Sicily, which you were just telling me spurred further developments in your painting with another series.
The attraction of this particular village in Sicily was its location in a valley that was limestone crags, and the limestone buildings grew out of this backdrop. And I'm always attracted to rock formations. In Cornwall I've done cliff faces, and more recently when we went to Greece to our favourite island Kefalonia, I was very attracted again to the really pale limestone rock formations there. They're just glorious, and I did a series of quite small studies of these. And the Cotswold one, that was when we were visiting an exhibition, a sculpture exhibition in a private garden, an absolutely beautiful garden, and I got distracted from the sculpture by this amazing lake and the colours of it, and it seemed quite magical. I have called it the Enchanted Lake, and it reflects the reflections of those turquoises.
Are reflections quite, are they difficult for you to handle? Because I know a lot of your work, you're kind of embracing sometimes the random movement of paint, trying to coax it back into place when you've got a reflection to deal with. Is that difficult?
No, it's the opposite, because it's non-specific. You know, nobody's ever going to say, no, that reflection didn't look like that, are they? You know, it's got to have some resemblance maybe to the actual things around it, but it's an opportunity to play with the paint and enjoy what the paint will do. And I'm always looking for those opportunities. And in this case, it was a range of really subtle greens, those mauvey greens that I really enjoy. And then the light coming through on a summer's afternoon.
think this is Kelmscott Manor that we've got here?
It is,
William
yes.
Morris's
William
house.
Morris's summer residence, yes. We went to visit the house and saw all his wonderful designs on the fabrics and the curtains and the wallpapers, and then went out into the gardens, and somebody had planted this wonderful wildflower meadow. And that attracted me far more than the designs in the house, really. It was more random, and I just so enjoyed the red poppies against the greens. And it's a totally new subject for me, and a lot of places have gone over to growing wildflowers, and it's a whole movement, and I wanted to celebrate that, and I think they're such a joyful addition to our landscape, and it was difficult to get it to work in the first place, but I am quite happy now with how it's come together.
It's a lovely example of how collage can play into elements of this, because some of these flower heads are they're applied later, aren't they?
Yes. Well, the whole of the floor of my studio is covered in painted paper, and sometimes I just see a colour on the floor, and I think that's what I've been trying to mix, you know, and why not apply it in that way? And in this case, with the poppy head shapes, they'd be incredibly fiddly to paint, but to cut and paste them was a really nice, crisp way of applying them.
This is a rather wonderful piece in the show, Jenny. It sort of stands out amongst the many woodland scenes that we've got around this exhibition. Suddenly we're indoors. This is a sort of imaginary, sort of Capriccio-esque bookshelf. Part of actually a much longer sort of frieze that you painted.
Yes, I started this when we were having some building work done at home, and I knew I'd be distracted, and I wanted a really good, all-embracing project that I could concentrate on and disregard the builders. And so I did it in sections along my studio wall using a scroll of paper, gradually unfurling it and just letting my mind and imagination roam. And I had masses of collage pieces. Mike let me have some old catalogues from the gallery that I could cut and paste as well. So in my own studio, I have obviously rows and rows of art books. So the top shelf had to be art books. And I thought, well, I'll put some of my heroes up there. So we've got Matisse up there and Braque, Degas, William Nicholson, and then a few more modern ones, Jankel Adler and Prunella Clough. And then I thought the backs of Penguin books are absolutely delightful. I always love to see a row of Penguin books. And I managed to get lots of collage pieces of penguins, and I used those, but I invented my titles. I thought, why should I have real novels? Let's have a little go. So we've got some interesting titles in there and interesting authors.
And you were just pointing out to me the titles of some of these
Well,
fantastic
yes,
folders down here.
That's the other thing that you have to have around you, don't you, these days? Endless files and folders with really boring things in. Well, I thought, why not reinvent the files? Let's have a file on golden days, or let's have a file on errors and omissions. And here we've got one, the thrill of it all, and best of all, some things are better left unboxed.
Oh, nice. So from the bright colour from the bookshelf that we've just been, this is a sort of change of pace. It's a lovely, very calming palette that you've got here. These are the artichoke heads that you sort of, I think you were just saying to me, you depicted over a period of time.
Yes, I've always loved them, and I've never managed to grow them myself, but my daughter-in-law gave me some absolutely fabulous heads when they were purple, like giant thistles, and I did a couple of those, and then of course they gradually went over, and I noticed these in another friend's garden. They had a whole bed full of the dying artichoke heads, and they were just standing there so stately against the winter sky, really sculptural, and again wonderful textures which I can't resist. So I thought maybe I could interpret them at that stage of their life as well.
We've got some sunflower heads around us as well, and they're kind of immediately, both the sunflowers and the artichoke heads, they remind me of Van Gogh. But that idea of sort of watching something over time and seeing those changes, it's sort of, it's captured in this painting, but it's a sort of theme in all of your work.
It is. It's just observing and looking closely. A sunflower, most people look at its face but actually they have such character when they turn sideways or when they start to drop as they're dying. And I prefer that side of them. They're much more interesting. They have more shapes to explore, and their leaves, as they start to die and twist and turn, there's so much more to get into.
You can see why they're that kind of world of flowers, of nature, of still life. It's an enduring theme for all artists. It's a sort of reflection of ourselves, isn't it?
Audio Jungle.
And now we've returned to local surroundings, or currently local surroundings. We've got Charnwood woodland around here in these last paintings. They remind me of driving into work a number of years ago with Mike Goldmark, who we both know runs this gallery, and driving slowly past the trees and the hedgelands, and the hedges and the sort of undergrowth there. And Mike would say to me that when he used to talk to the artist Rigby Graham would say, what colour is that tree? And Mike would say, well, it looks fairly brown to me. And he'd say, no, go up close.
Yes.
You'll see they're anything but.
Yes.
And we've got lovely colour across these trees here.
That's what I say to my students as well. Have another look. Yeah, this is a winter hedgerow with entwined branches. And again, it's done over another painting. So I was finding the negative shapes and leaving some of the positive, the negative shapes being the sky behind. And they just emerged, which I love doing. You know, even I don't know what's going to emerge when I work like that. And it led to a series of hedgerows done at different times of the year. And one in Cornwall, which in Cornwall they have a stone base to their hedges, and that's quite a different combination of textures and growth.
I wanted to ask you about what's next on the horizon. We've been talking about local woodlands here, and you've let me know that actually this won't be local for not so long.
We are about to move house. We're going to come and live here in Rutland.
Okay.
Our son lives in Rutland and we want to be near to him, and we feel like a change. It will be very exciting because I shall have lots of new landscape around me and new territory to explore. So
new challenges.
Yes. Not looking forward to the chaos at all, and I should be without a studio for about 3 months, and I'm not enjoying that.
Well, we're looking forward to the new paintings whenever they do arrive.
Thank you, Max.
I hope you've enjoyed this exhibition. A big thank you to Jenny for guiding us around and letting us into this sort of wonderful world that you've brought to us. The works are here to see in the gallery. Do please come and see them in the flesh. There's all sorts of textures, beautiful colours, layering that you can't really appreciate until you're here in front of them. Also available on the website. Do please get in touch if you're interested. I'm sure we'd like to find some lovely new homes for them.
That would be nice. And thank you very much to all of you. You worked so hard on my behalf. Thank you.
It's a lovely show.